I did it because she's my little sister. That's what big brothers do, right? Every first of the month, I'd sit at my kitchen table in Portland, write out a check for $1,200, seal it in an envelope, and drive the 15 minutes to her apartment in Beaverton. Sarah would meet me at the door, usually still in her bathrobe, eyes red from crying. She'd hug me tight, whisper thank you into my shoulder, and I'd drive home feeling like maybe I was doing something right in this world. My wife Linda had passed 2 years before Sarah's divorce, so helping my sister filled a space in my life I didn't know how to fill any other way. The divorce had been brutal. Tom left her after 18 years of marriage for a woman he met at his gym. At least, that's what Sarah told me. She was 52, working part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, barely making enough to cover groceries. The apartment rent alone was eating up most of her paycheck. Her daughter Emma was away at college in Seattle, and Sarah didn't want to burden her with the truth about how tight money had become. So I stepped in. $1,200 a month. It wasn't easy on a retired teacher's pension, but I'd saved well, and what else was I going to spend it on? Sarah needed me. For 3 years, I made that drive. First of every month, like clockwork. Sometimes we'd have coffee. Sometimes she'd be too upset to talk. I understood. Divorce after 18 years changes a person. I'd seen it happen to friends. The shame, the failure, the starting over at 50 feeling. I never pushed. Just handed over the envelope and let her know I was there. Then one Thursday afternoon, everything changed. I was at the grocery store, debating between the regular coffee and the fancy French roast Linda used to buy, when I heard someone call my name. Mr. Patterson? I turned around and saw Jason Mitchell pushing a cart toward me. Jason had been in my 11th grade English class back in 2008. A quiet kid with a gift for poetry he tried to hide behind a tough guy exterior. Now he was 28, 29 maybe. Still had that same shy smile. Jason, good to see you, I said, genuinely pleased. Former students were one of the perks of teaching in the same town for 35 years. We chatted for a few minutes about his life. He was managing a restaurant now, a nice Italian place downtown called Romano's. Married, baby on the way. I felt that familiar swell of pride teachers get when their students turn out okay. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Hey, I saw your sister last weekend. At Romano's. He smiled. She and her husband seemed to be celebrating something. They ordered the expensive wine. The French roast slipped from my hand. It hit the floor but didn't break, just rolled under the shelving. Her husband? Jason's smile faded. Tom, right? Tall guy. Glasses. Always orders the veal piccata. They come in every couple of months. Really sweet couple. Always holding hands. My mouth went dry. Jason. Sarah and Tom have been divorced for 3 years. The color drained from his face. Oh, God. Mr. Patterson, I'm so sorry, I thought. I mean, they seem so. He trailed off, looking at his shoes the way he used to when he forgot to do his homework. I don't remember what I said to end that conversation. Something polite, probably. Teachers are good at autopilot politeness. I left my half-full cart right there in the aisle and walked out to my car, sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe Jason saw someone who looked like Tom. Maybe Sarah had gotten back together with him and was embarrassed to tell me. Maybe they'd reconciled and she didn't want me to stop helping until she was financially stable enough on her own. Maybe. But I knew. Deep in my gut, in that place where truth lives before your brain catches up, I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. Linda's side of the bed felt especially empty. I kept thinking about all those monthly visits. Sarah never invited me inside, now that I thought about it. Always met me at the door, always in that ratty blue bathrobe, always just a quick hug and a thank you. In 3 years, I'd never seen the inside of her apartment. I'd thought it was because she was embarrassed. The apartment was probably a downgrade from the house she'd shared with Tom. I'd assumed she didn't want her big brother seeing how far she'd fallen. Now I wondered what I'd have seen if I'd walked inside. Friday morning, I drove to Romano's. It was closed. Wouldn't open until 4 for dinner service. But I sat in my car across the street and called Jason. Asked him what Tom looked like. Tall. Yeah. About 6'1". Brown hair going gray. Glasses. Wire-rimmed. Has this way of laughing where he throws his head back, and he walks with a little limp. Left leg. Sarah mentioned he had knee surgery a few years back. Tom had knee surgery 5 years ago. I'd visited him in the hospital. I thanked Jason and hung up. Sat there staring at the restaurant's dark windows. 3 years. $1,200 a month. 36 months times $1,200. $43,200. The smart thing would have been to call Sarah. To ask her directly. But something in me needed to see it with my own eyes. Needed proof before I let myself believe my little sister could do this. So I did something I'd never done before. I drove to her apartment on a random Friday afternoon. No envelope in hand. No first-of-the-month routine. Just showed up. It was 2:30 p.m. Sarah's car was in the parking lot, the old Honda Civic I'd helped her buy 2 years ago. I'd covered the down payment. Another $4,000 I'd forgotten to add to my mental tally. I walked up to her second-floor unit, number 214, and raised my hand to knock. Sarah's laugh, light and carefree, the way she used to laugh when we were kids. Then a man's voice, deeper, saying something I couldn't make out. Then more laughter. My hand froze mid-air. I should have knocked. Should have confronted them right then. But I couldn't. My feet carried me back down the stairs, back to my car. I drove home on autopilot, missed my turn twice, finally pulled into my driveway and just sat there. The thing is, I wanted to be wrong, even with everything Jason had said, even with the voices I'd heard. I wanted there to be an explanation that didn't make my sister a liar and a thief. I spent the weekend going through old photos. Found Sarah's wedding album in a box in the garage, the one she'd given me to hold on to after the divorce. Tom's face smiled up at me from glossy pages. I studied every photo of him, memorizing the details. The wire-rimmed glasses. The way his left shoulder sat slightly lower than his right. That knee surgery had been on his left leg because he'd torn his ACL playing softball. Monday morning, I called the dental office where Sarah worked. Asked to make an appointment with Dr. Chen. Said I was a new patient. The receptionist who answered wasn't Sarah. She told me they had an opening Wednesday at 10. I took it. I didn't need a dentist. I needed to know if Sarah was really working those part-time hours she'd told me about, or if that was another lie. Wednesday at 9:45, I sat in my car outside the dental office. At 9:55, Sarah's Honda pulled into the lot. She got out wearing scrubs, hair pulled back, looking tired. She walked into the office, and through the glass door, I watched her settle behind the reception desk, boot up the computer, arrange the appointment book. So she was working. That part was true. But if she was working, and if Tom was still in the picture, then where was my money going? I canceled my dental appointment and drove to the Beaverton Town Square Mall. Spent an hour walking around, trying to think. Ended up in a coffee shop, the kind Linda used to drag me to, with $12 lattes and names that sounded like desserts. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window. That's when I saw him. Tom walked past the coffee shop with shopping bags from Nordstrom. Expensive bags. He was wearing a new leather jacket, the kind that costs $500 or $600. Walking with that slight limp, left leg favoring right, just like Jason had described. My coffee went cold as I watched him disappear into the crowd. I thought about following him. Thought about confronting him right there in the mall. But what would I say? Excuse me. Are you still married to my sister? And if so, where's my $43,000 going? Instead, I went home and did something I hadn't done since Linda died. I cried. Not the dignified, silent tears you shed at funerals, but the ugly, gasping kind that comes from somewhere deep and broken. My little sister, the girl I'd taught to ride a bike, the one who'd called me sobbing when her goldfish died, and I'd driven across town at midnight with a shoebox to give it a proper burial in her backyard. The woman I'd held when Linda passed who'd told me, "You're not alone, David. You'll never be alone." She'd looked me in the eye once a month for 3 years and taken money she didn't need. Lied about a divorce that never happened. Let me believe I was saving her when really, I was just funding what? Vacations? New clothes? Expensive dinners at Romano's? Thursday morning, I did the math. Really did it this time. With a calculator and a notepad. $1,200 monthly for 36 months. $43,200. The down payment on the Honda. $4,000. The money I'd given her for unexpected dental work after she said her insurance wouldn't cover a crown. $2,000. The $500 here and there for Emma's textbooks or a new work computer or car repairs. $52,000. $52,000. I could have retired early with that money. Could have traveled like Linda always wanted. Could have done a lot of things. But I'd chosen to help my sister instead, and she'd chosen to steal from me. Friday rolled around. Not the first of the month, but close enough. I wrote out a check for $1,200 like I'd done 36 times before. Sealed it in an envelope. But this time, I also wrote a letter. The letter said, "Sarah, I know. I've known for a week now. Tom never left. You never got divorced. I don't know if you needed the money or just wanted it, but I want you to know it's over. This is the last check. Don't call me. Don't explain. I'm not angry. I'm just done." I drove to Beaverton, parked in her lot, walked up to Unit 214 for what I knew would be the last time. It was 3 p.m., before she'd be home from work. I slid the envelope under her door. Both of them, the check and the letter. Then I stood there in that hallway, hand still on the door frame, and I let myself say goodbye. Not to Sarah, but to who I thought she was. To the little sister I'd protected. To the person I'd believed needed me. I was halfway down the stairs when the door opened. "David?" I stopped, turned around. Tom stood in the doorway, barefoot, holding my envelope. He'd shaved since I saw him at the mall, but it was definitely him. Wire-rimmed glasses, left shoulder dip, the too expensive leather jacket hanging on a hook behind him. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. "How long have you been home?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I work from home Fridays." He looked down at the envelope, then back at me. "David, I can explain. Can you?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Sarah was going to tell you." "When?" "After another year? Another $50,000? His face went white. "It's not. We didn't mean for it to go this long." "How long was it supposed to go?" 6 months, maybe a year, just until we got back on our feet. Sarah's hours got cut at the office, and I was between contracts, and we just needed a little help. We were going to pay you back." "With what? My own money?" He flinched. "Were you ever even separated?" I asked. "No." He had the decency to look ashamed. "We had some problems. Talked about divorce. Sarah mentioned it to you in passing, and you offered to help if she ever needed it. Then things got tight financially, and she said you'd offered, that it wasn't really lying if you'd volunteered. I volunteered to help my divorced sister, not fund my married sister's lifestyle. It wasn't like that." "No?" I gestured at the leather jacket. "What was it like, Tom?" He didn't answer. "Where's Sarah now?" I asked. "Work. She gets home at 5. Tell her she doesn't need to call." I turned to leave, then stopped. "Actually, tell her this. Tell her I remember when she was 7 and broke Mom's favorite vase playing indoor soccer. She was terrified Mom would never forgive her. I took the blame, said I'd knocked it over reaching for a book. Got grounded for 2 weeks. Mom never knew the truth." Tom frowned, confused about why I was telling him this. "I took the blame because that's what big brothers do. We protect our little sisters, even from themselves. But I can't protect her from this. She did this, and she'll have to live with it." I walked down those stairs and didn't look back. Didn't let myself wonder if Tom was still standing in the doorway, or if he'd gone back inside to call Sarah, or what they'd say to each other. I got in my car and drove. Not home. I couldn't face the empty house yet. Instead, I drove to the coast, to Cannon Beach, where Linda and I used to go every anniversary. Parked at our favorite spot overlooking Haystack Rock and watched the waves come in. My phone rang 4 times during that drive. Sarah's number. I didn't answer. She left one voicemail. I deleted it without listening. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly, disguised as need, as trust, as love. You hand over pieces of yourself thinking you're building something, and then one day you realize you've been dismantled instead. I sat on that beach until sunset, watching families play in the surf, couples walking hand in hand, dogs chasing seagulls, life just continuing, oblivious to the fact that mine had fundamentally shifted. When I finally drove home, it was dark. There was a car in my driveway. Sarah's Honda. She was sitting on my front porch, hugging her knees. And when my headlights hit her face, I saw she'd been crying. Part of me, the big brother part, wanted to rush over and ask what was wrong, to fix it. But I'd been fixing her problems for 3 years with money that was supposed to be for me and Linda's dream retirement. I was done. I parked in the garage, walked past her to my front door. "David, please." Her voice cracked. "Just let me explain." I unlocked the door. "I'm sorry. We were desperate. I didn't know what else to do." I turned and looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't wearing the bathrobe. She had on nice jeans, a new sweater, jewelry I didn't recognize. Her hair was professionally colored, not the box dye I'd assumed she could only afford. "You could have asked me for help, honestly," I said. "I would have given it. You'd already done so much. With Linda's funeral costs and—" "Don't." The word came out harder than I intended. "Don't use Linda's death to justify this. She would be ashamed of you." Sarah's face crumpled. "I know. God, David, I know. I wanted to tell you so many times. But then another month would pass, and it got easier to just keep going. Tom kept saying we'd pay you back when his next contract came through. But then there'd be something else we needed, and—" "Stop." She stopped. "I don't want the money back," I said. "I don't want to hear about what you needed or why. I just want you to leave. You're my brother." "Yeah," I said softly. "I am. And you took advantage of that. For 3 years, you looked me in the eye and lied. That's not something I can just forgive because we share DNA. So that's it? We're done?" I thought about that. Thought about holidays with her and Emma. About being Uncle David. About 30 years of memories before this all went wrong. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know I can't look at you right now without seeing every lie. So yeah, for now, we're done." She stood up, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I'll pay you back. Every penny. I swear. Keep it. Consider it the cost of learning who you really are." That made her flinch worse than anything else I'd said. She walked to her car, got in, sat there for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel. Then she drove away, and I went inside to an empty house that felt emptier than it had since Linda died. The next few weeks were hard. I kept wanting to call Sarah, to check on her, to fall back into the pattern we'd had. My hand would reach for my phone. My car would start drifting toward Beaverton on autopilot, but I'd stop myself. Redirect. Jason called to check on me. I told him it was handled, thanked him for telling me. He asked if I wanted to meet for coffee sometime, said his wife was always telling him he needed to expand his social circle beyond toddler playgroups. We met at that same coffee shop where I'd seen Tom. Jason brought his wife, Michelle, and their baby daughter, Grace. 3 months old, already had her dad's shy smile. "Mr. Patterson," Michelle said, "Jason's told me so much about your class. He still has the poetry journal you made them keep." "Still?" I raised my eyebrows at Jason. He shrugged, embarrassed. "You told us poetry was a way to figure out what we really felt. Turns out that's useful in regular life too." I smiled, surprised by how good it felt. We became friends after that. Real friends. Not just former teacher and student who made polite conversation in grocery stores. Jason and Michelle would invite me over for dinner. I'd babysit Grace when they needed a date night. They'd invite me to their church, and sometimes I'd go, sitting in the back pew and letting the music wash over me. One Sunday after service, Jason asked if I'd ever thought about teaching again. Not full-time, but maybe tutoring, or working with kids who were struggling. I hadn't, but I started. Now, 3 months later, I tutor English twice a week at the community center. Kids who need extra help, mostly from families who can't afford private tutors. I don't charge anything. The satisfaction of watching them finally understand Shakespeare or nail a college entrance essay is payment enough. Sarah sent me a check last month, $1,200. The memo line said payment 1 of 43. I tore it up, sent the pieces back with a note that said, I don't want your money. I want you to figure out why you thought this was okay. She hasn't sent another check. Emma called me 2 weeks ago. She's home for summer break, wants to meet for coffee. She doesn't know everything, just that her mom and I had a Emma didn't do anything wrong, and she shouldn't lose her uncle because her mother made bad choices. But I'm not ready to forgive Sarah. Maybe I never will be. And I've made peace with that. Here's what I've learned. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. Being family doesn't mean accepting betrayal. And sometimes the people you take a bullet for are the ones who'll shoot you in the back. I still drive past that Romano's sometimes, and I think about Tom and Sarah sitting there with their expensive wine, laughing about God knows what. Maybe they laugh about me. Maybe they don't think about me at all. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm 61 years old. I spent 3 years of my life supporting a lie. I could be angry about that, could let it consume me, turn me bitter. But I think about Linda sometimes, about what she'd say. She'd probably tell me that those $52,000 bought me something valuable. Clarity. I know now who I can trust. I know now that good intentions don't protect you from bad people, even when those people are family. And I know that the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life they can't touch, finding purpose they can't steal, and choosing who gets to be part of your story going forward. Sarah's not in mine anymore, but Jason and Michelle are, and Grace, who calls me Grandpa Day even though we're not related, and the kids I tutor, who remind me why I became a teacher in the first place. My knees still ache when I climb stairs. My back protests when I bend over to pick up Grace, but that pain doesn't come from delivering envelopes full of lies anymore. It comes from living a life that's finally, honestly, mine.